to Contemporary Chinese Revised Edition, Lesson 2 and the second vocab list. We start off with the word fresh, 新鲜, 新鲜, and again that's made up of two characters. This is a, this is an adjective, and it's made up of the characters 新, which I'm not sure if we've come across before, but anyhow it means new, as in, you know, new car, a new house. 鲜, 鲜 is an interesting character because it's made up of the first part, which is 鱼. Let me type that up for you so that you can see. So over here we have 鱼. Search through my list. 鱼, which means fish, and we have 羊, which, let's see if I can find it. There it is. 羊. And that means sheep or goat. So if you look at it, I mean, both those things, fish and sheep or goat, they're edible things. They're meat of a sort. And I guess, I don't know about sheep or goat, but with fish, obviously, freshness is very important. And of course, seafood and fish in general can go off very easily. So the idea of fresh, and this doesn't, 新鲜 doesn't necessarily just apply to food. It can also apply to, for example, if you're talking about the air is very fresh, 空气很新鲜. You can also use 新鲜 that way as well. So we can say, for example, 空, we'll learn this word soon actually. 空气很新鲜. The air is fresh. 空, sorry, I need to move my cursor. 空气 are those first two characters. Moving along, we're now going to look at the word for clean. 干净. 干净. It's also an adjective, so it's describing a character or feature of something. 干, the first character, means dry, and 净 means clear or pure. So 干净, clean, and they use it fairly much the same way that we would use it in English. Next one is bread. 面包. 面包. 面 is the word for flour. It means some other things as well, but in the context of food, for flour, bao is in Chinese generally a kind of bun made of flour. So bread is, I guess, in its initial form is like a big bun. So in Chinese that's called 面包. Now here we have a new measure word, and it says a measure word for something flat and thin. In relation to bread, therefore, it's a slice of bread or a piece of bread. 一片面包. 一片面包. A piece of bread. 两片面包. Two pieces of bread. So this 片 generally refers to things like food and so on. Moving along, we have milk. 牛奶. 牛奶. So actually in that word, this is a noun. In that word, the character 奶 is actually a word for milk. The first character there, 牛, means cow. 牛. So this is cow's milk. So if it was milk from some other animal, then they would use the character for that animal before 奶. And then also, for example, if it was mother's milk, they use the word for mother, 母, 母奶. Let's just put that there. 母奶. 母奶. So for mother's milk. There are other words for mother's milk, but that's just an example of how the actual word for milk is 奶. Anyhow, moving along. So we need a measure word for that. There are lots of different measure words that we could have for something like a liquid, like that. because obviously liquid can be contained in a range of different things. So the measure word is generally the kind of container that it's contained in. But a common one is the word for cup or glass, 杯, 杯. So 一杯牛奶, 一杯牛奶, 两杯牛奶. Which could mean a cup of glass or a cup of milk or a glass of milk. And of course you can use that for all sorts of other drinks and things like that. Moving along, we've now got sashimi. Sashimi. 生鱼片. 生鱼片. So here the 生 character, which we saw before with doctor, and I mentioned it also relates to student, here it takes on a new meaning. And 生 in this case means raw, uncooked, or even more broadly, untreated, as it says there. Untreated. Because, well, why do I say untreated? Because if you ever come across this word, 生 number 3, 生水, 生水, that's actually the equivalent of, if I can spell, is that how you spell it? That'll do. Sewage. So in other words, it's untreated water, and you can't, and in China they don't, I mean, we drink 生水 here, well, when I say yes, sewage, I mean it's really untreated water or raw water. The Chinese think of it as raw water. Probably what we get out of our taps here, they would consider to be 生水 because it's not cooked, it's not boiled, and in China they do not drink. And if you're ever in China, do not drink water out of a tap. You need to boil it because China's water is not safe. So 鱼 we learned before means fish. And 片 we also learned before means something, it's a measure word for something which is flat and thin, so it means a slice or a piece. So the combination of 生鱼片 literally means raw fish pieces. Although they explain, yeah, 鱼片 meaning slices of fish. Moving along, so here's a handy word for us. Yesterday, 昨天, 昨天. I'm sure you'll all remember the word for today, which is 今天. So our sequence is 昨天 for yesterday, 今天 for today, and 明天 for tomorrow. 明天. So that's very handy for us when we're talking about time and so on. So that TW there means that it is a time word. And that's one of the things about Chinese that I think I've mentioned before. When we're talking about tense, so past tense, present tense, future tense, Chinese verbs don't change their form, their spelling, their shape at all to represent tense. So how do they represent tense? Generally speaking, in Chinese, tense is represented by some kind of time word. So they will specifically refer to the time frame. And that's one of the reasons why you'll sometimes hear people, native Chinese speakers, when they're speaking English, say, yesterday I go to the library. Because for them, 去 in Chinese doesn't change whether you're talking about past, present or future. And so it takes a little while for them to adapt to English, where we would say, yesterday I went to the library. Our verbs do change. This next one, 请客. 请客. And we've come across the word 请 before, and we've learned that it can mean a couple of things. One is please, the other is to invite. Another one is to ask somebody politely to do something. And 客, I don't think we've come across before. 客 is a guest or a visitor, and it can also mean a customer if it's in a shop scenario. So the word for that, which this is additional, is 顾客, which means customer. So 客. And so this whole this expression, which is again one of those verbs that is a verb, 请 to invite, and 客, which is a noun meaning a guest or a customer or a visitor. 请客 literally means to invite a guest, but what we actually mean is that we're going to treat them to, for example, a meal. So if you're with friends in China and you're talking about going together for a meal, you may, or if one of your Chinese friends raises the idea first, they might say to you, 今天我请客. 今天我请客. And what that means is that they're treating you to a meal, so they will pay for the meal. So you need to remember when you're making arrangements with friends to get that clear. Anyhow, that's 请客. Moving along, to take medicine in Chinese is 吃药. 吃药. And I think we've learned that expression, that word before, 吃 meaning to eat, and 药 is a new word which means medicine or medication. So in China they eat medicine. And again, that is one of those verbs that is a verb plus a noun combination. So there are certain circumstances where we need to split up those two characters and put other things in between. 吃药. This next one is an adjective meaning worried or anxious. 着急. 着急. That first character has a couple of other pronunciations, and we will learn some of those later in the semester. And so you need to look very carefully at the other characters it's combined with. But this is a very common expression, 着急. And for example, if I want to say I'm worried about something or other, you can say 我很着急. 我很着急. I'm worried or I'm anxious about whatever it is. So that's a very handy one to know. Now this is interesting. Here is an example that I was talking about before with when we looked at the character 错. 错. And I mentioned the idea of this sort of verb plus complement. Verb plus complement. And I mentioned verb as part of that. Verb plus the resultative complement. So in other words, the first character, in this case, 说 is the verb, is the action to speak, and then the second character is often another verb, and in this case it's 完, if I can find that, which means to finish something. And so the combination of it means to be finished saying whatever it is you want to say. 我说完了. 我说完了. So that sort of verb plus complement type combination we're going to see a lot of later on in the semester. Sometimes, if you're talking to somebody about something that you're doing and they ask you how you're going, you can just simply say, 我完了. 我完了. A very common one that I will probably use with you guys, possibly also Ya 老师 and Anthony 老师 will use, is this one here. 做完 做完, which means have you finished doing something? So if you're, I don't know, if you're doing an exercise in one of the seminar or the tutorial classes, and then Yang 老师 or Anthony 老师 want to then move on or get you to give you tell everyone what your answer to the exercise is, he might ask you 大家做完了吗? 大家做完了吗? Has everybody finished? Okay, moving along, we've got a doctor, which we talked about before, 医生. 医生, doctor, and I've already talked enough about that. Now we're getting into some body parts. 肚子. 肚子 meaning your stomach. So really what it means is the lower part of the stomach, and not the actual stomach itself where the digestion takes place, but the lower part. 肚子. So there is an expression in Chinese, not sure that you necessarily need to know this, but anyhow. So if you want to say, for example, that somebody is pregnant, you can say they are 大肚子. And if you want to say they become pregnant, 她大肚子了. 大肚子 meaning to be pregnant. And then if you want to talk about somebody that's got a big stomach, you can say, 他们的肚子很大. So they've got a big stomach. Now, if I want to say, for example, so I go to the doctor and the doctor says, what's wrong with you, which we will learn in this lesson. I might want to say, for example, I have a stomach ache. So what you would say is 我肚子疼. 我肚子疼. Now this 疼, it's an adjective, so it's describing a feature or characteristic of something. And as we know in Chinese, different from English, when we use adjectives, we don't need an additional verb. So for example, in English, we might say, I have a stomach ache. I have a stomach ache. Whereas in Chinese, they do not say 我有肚子疼. They say 我肚子疼. My stomach aches. And that's because 疼 is an adjective. So you do not need an additional verb before adjectives in Chinese. Okay, next one is washroom or toilet. 厕所. 厕所. And I think early on, well, for those of you that were here in first semester, we actually did in the virtual restaurant, we looked at an alternative word for that, which you may or may not remember, which was 卫生间. Okay, and then finally we have another word for but. 不过. 不过. The other words that we know, I'm sure you can call to mind as you're watching this, if you are watching this, are, I think the first one we learned was 可是, which is but. And then I think we recently just learned 但是, which is but. And in the case of those two, really the but is meant in the sense of, for example, we might say, I would like to go to the movies with you tonight, but I can't. Something's come up and I'm not free. So then you would use 可是. So you would say 我想跟你一起去看电影，可是我不能去了. So I can't go. We could also say 但是我不能去了. 不过 is slightly different in the sense that we might say, I would like to go to see the movie with you, but I need to go to the bank first. So here we're not saying, but I can't go. Here we're saying, we're adding an extra condition, I guess, that needs to be met before I can do what it is that we plan to do. So you might say, 我想跟你一起看电影，不过我得, we learned that last lesson, I must, 我得先 first 去银行. So let me type that out for you. 我想跟你一起去看电影. I think, I'm not sure if that's a new word for us, but anyhow. But 不过 我得先去银行. So here the but is not sort of saying I can't do this. It's saying I need to do something else first.